Every woman in Seoul wanted the attention of the feared Korean Mafia boss. Models chased him. Rich daughters followed him. Powerful families tried to impress him. But he ignored all of them. Cold eyes, no emotions, no interest, until one night everything changed. In the middle of a luxury party filled with wealthy elites and beautiful women, he suddenly stopped walking. Not because of danger, not because of business, but because he saw her. A quiet African woman working inside the restaurant, smiling softly while carrying food trays. And for the first time in years, the Mafia boss couldn't look away.
Do you see
The
where
entire
Mr. Tanaka
ballroom
is
noticed
looking?
it. The women around him noticed it. Even his bodyguards
But
noticed
she's
it.
just a waitress.
Because the man who ignored every woman was now walking directly toward her. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and join thousands of viewers who love unforgettable stories. Trust me, this one will keep you hooked until the very end. Nobody understood why the Korean Mafia boss kept refusing women. Not the actresses. Not the daughters of powerful politicians. Not the luxury models who followed him through private parties in Seoul, hoping for a single glance. And definitely not the women who spent millions trying to enter his world. Because Kang Min-jae was the kind of man women noticed immediately. Not loudly. Not because he demanded attention, but because everything around him shifted whenever he entered a room. The atmosphere became quieter, more careful, more aware. People adjusted themselves around him without realizing it. That was power, real power, and men like him carried it differently. The rooftop ballroom overlooking Seoul glittered beneath gold chandelier lights and slow drifting crystal reflections. Soft violin music filled the expensive silence, while wealthy elites moved carefully between conversations that mattered more than most governments. Near the center of it all stood Kang Min-jae, tall, sharp, untouchable. His tailored black suit rested perfectly against his athletic frame. The top buttons of his white shirt left slightly open beneath the dark luxury coat. Dragon tattoos disappeared beneath his collar before extending slightly above the side of his neck. His black hair was brushed back neatly, exposing calm, narrow eyes that never revealed more emotion than necessary. Women watched him constantly. He ignored every single one. A famous actress touched his arm lightly. No reaction. A billionaire's daughter smiled at him from across the champagne table. Nothing. Another woman purposely brushed against him while walking past. Still nothing. And somehow, that only made him more attractive. Because attention loses value when everyone receives it. But Min-jae's attention? That was rare. And rare things become dangerous. You could at least pretend to enjoy yourself, a voice beside him said calmly. Min-jae lifted his whiskey glass slightly without looking away from the skyline beyond the glass walls. I am enjoying myself, his closest friend almost laughed. You've ignored every woman here for the last 2 hours. That sounds peaceful. That sounds emotionally unavailable. Min-jae finally glanced toward him. A small pause, then, I came for the meeting, not the women, never the women. That part of his life had stopped interesting him years ago. Too many fake smiles. Too many calculated conversations. Too many people wanting something. Money, protection, status, access. Nobody approached powerful men without wanting something from them. Eventually, you stop believing in sincerity altogether. Across the ballroom, another group of women noticed him looking up. Instantly, they straightened slightly. One adjusted her dress. Another smiled softly. Min-jae looked away immediately. His friend shook his head. You know they're going to keep trying. They're free to waste their time. You ever think maybe one day someone won't? Min-jae took a slow sip from his glass. Then she'll be smarter than the rest. That answer should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded tired, because the truth was simple. Nothing surprised him anymore. Not beauty, not charm, not attention. Everything became predictable eventually. And predictable things lose meaning. Meanwhile, 3 floors below the ballroom, someone completely different was trying not to get fired. You're late. The kitchen manager's voice cut sharply through the busy luxury restaurant corridor. The young African woman immediately lowered her head slightly. I'm sorry. You're always sorry. I know. That doesn't help me. She apologized again quietly while adjusting the sleeves of her black and white service uniform. The elegant, fitted outfit hugged her slim figure neatly, the white apron tied carefully around her waist, as loose strands of silky black hair fell softly near her face. She looked exhausted, not weak, just tired in the way people become after carrying too much responsibility for too long. Table 7 is waiting, the manager snapped. Move faster tonight. Yes, sir. She grabbed the serving tray quickly before hurrying deeper into the glowing luxury restaurant beneath the ballroom. Nobody there cared who she was. To most people, she barely existed, just another waitress. Another invisible worker moving quietly between rich people, pretending not to notice her. But invisible people usually observe the most, and Naomi observed everything: the expensive watches, the fake smiles, the way wealthy men laughed louder around important people, the way powerful women looked at each other like competition instead of friends. Luxury spaces always looked beautiful from the outside, but the closer you stood to them, the lonelier they felt. Naomi moved carefully between tables, balancing drinks effortlessly despite the pressure surrounding her. Warm chandelier lights reflected softly against her slungescons, while conversations blurred around her like background noise. You're new here? The question came from one of the older waitresses. Naomi nodded lightly. Second week. The woman studied her briefly, then sighed. You're too pretty for this job. Naomi blinked once. What? Trust me, the waitress muttered quietly while arranging glasses. Pretty girls don't survive long around powerful men. Naomi almost smiled awkwardly. I'm not trying to impress anyone. That's usually when it happens. Before Naomi could respond, movement near the private elevator changed the entire atmosphere upstairs. The ballroom quieted subtly, not fully, just enough, because Kang Min-jae was leaving. And somehow, people always noticed that too. His bodyguards moved naturally around him as he stepped toward the private corridor, overlooking the lower luxury restaurant through towering glass panels. He wasn't paying attention until he heard laughter, real laughter. Not the rehearsed kind upstairs, not the fake polished social laughter people used to gain approval. This sounded different, soft, unexpected, human. Min Jae's eyes shifted downward slightly through the glass level beneath him. And that's when he saw her. The young African waitress, standing near the kitchen entrance, smiling at one of the elderly chefs after accidentally spilling water on herself. It wasn't even a dramatic moment. No slow music, no cinematic entrance, no perfect timing. Just a smile. But something about it felt painfully genuine inside a world filled with performance. She laughed quietly while trying to clean the mess from her sleeve, embarrassed but still smiling naturally despite the stressful environment around her. And strangely, Min Jae stopped walking. His bodyguard noticed immediately. Sir? No response. Min Jae kept looking down toward the restaurant floor, not because she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Although she was beautiful, dangerously beautiful, soft oval face, warm glowing skin, long silky black hair tied neatly behind her shoulders, slim waist, elegant posture, large expressive eyes that carried gentleness instead of calculation. But beauty alone never interested him. What stopped him was the absence of performance. She wasn't trying. That changed everything. Below, Naomi finally finished cleaning herself before looking up briefly toward the glass upper level. And for 1 second, their eyes met. The smile disappeared from her face instantly. Not from fear, from surprise, because even she recognized him immediately. Everyone in Seoul knew Kang Min-jae. Not publicly, not officially, but people knew. The dangerous kind of wealth always creates rumors, and rumors surrounding Min-jae were never small. Her heartbeat stumbled slightly. His gaze remained calm, unreadable, but he didn't look away, which felt somehow worse. The older waitress beside Naomi suddenly noticed too, and immediately panicked. Oh my God, Naomi looked toward her. What? Don't look directly at him. Too late. Min Jae was still watching her, not aggressively, not possessively, just interested. And somehow that felt more dangerous. Upstairs, his friend noticed the direction of his gaze. then slowly looked down toward Naomi. A small smile appeared immediately. Well, Minjae finally moved again. What? That's the first time you've looked at a woman longer than 3 seconds all year. Minjae didn't answer, because, strangely, he wasn't thinking about her beauty. He was thinking about her smile, and somehow that felt far more dangerous. The strange thing about powerful men was that they usually noticed everything, every movement, every lie, every hidden intention behind a smile. That was how men like Kang Min-jae survived. And maybe that was exactly why Naomi unsettled him. Because when she smiled, there was nothing behind it, no strategy, no manipulation, no performance. Just sincerity, which felt unfamiliar inside his world. Min-jae stood silently near the upper glass railing long after Naomi disappeared back into the restaurant corridor below. The violin music upstairs continued softly, while wealthy guests moved between conversations and champagne glasses, without realizing the most dangerous man in the building had completely stopped paying attention to them. His closest friend leaned beside him casually. "You're still looking." Min Jae finally reached for his whiskey again. She smiled. The answer came calmly, but it was enough to make his friend pause. Because Min Jae never spoke about women first, ever. "That's what caught your attention?" he asked carefully. Min Jae looked toward the lower floor again. She wasn't pretending. A small silence followed. Then, that might actually be worse. Min Jae almost smirked faintly, maybe. Because authentic people were dangerous in a different way. Especially to someone who had forgotten what authenticity looked like. Below, Naomi was trying very hard not to think about the eye contact that just happened upstairs, which became difficult when the older waitress beside her refused to stop whispering nervously. "You know who that was, right?" Naomi nodded quietly while arranging wine glasses. "Kang Min-jae." "Then stop looking calm." "I wasn't trying to look calm. You looked directly at him." Naomi blinked once. "It was an accident." Men like him don't believe in accidents. That sentence lingered strangely in her mind. Not because it sounded threatening. Because it sounded true. Powerful people always assumed intention behind everything. And maybe they had to. Naomi continued working quietly, while the restaurant atmosphere slowly grew busier beneath the ballroom above. Expensive dinners moved in and out of the kitchen, while chefs shouted controlled instructions, beneath the glow of polished luxury lighting and drifting steam. Still, something felt different now. Not around the restaurant, around her. Like people were suddenly paying more attention than before. A younger waitress hurried toward her. The VIP floor requested another bottle. Naomi reached for the tray automatically. "I'll take it." The older waitress grabbed her wrist immediately. "No." Naomi frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because the VIP floor means him." A pause. Then quieter. "And I don't think that's a good idea." Naomi looked toward the private elevator briefly. Honestly, she didn't think it was a good idea either. But refusing VIP requests inside a luxuries establishment usually created more problems than accepting them. So eventually, she took the tray anyway. The elevator ride upward felt longer than it should have. Soft golden lights reflected against the mirrored walls, while Naomi adjusted the bottle carefully in her hands, trying to calm the strange nervousness growing in her chest. This was ridiculous. She wasn't entering danger, she was delivering wine. Still, the closer the elevator climbed, the quieter her thoughts became. When the doors finally opened, the atmosphere upstairs felt completely different from the restaurant below. Colder, more controlled, luxury without warmth. Every conversation sounded measured carefully. Every smile looked expensive rather than genuine. Wealthy elites moved through the ballroom like people performing versions of themselves instead of actually living. And near the glass skyline window, Kang Min-jae stood exactly where she remembered him, tall still, untouchable. Several women surrounded the nearby area pretending not to notice him, while secretly hoping he would notice them first. He ignored all of them effortlessly. One woman laughed too loudly beside him. No reaction. Another touched his arm while speaking softly. Nothing. It almost looked cruel, not intentionally, just naturally. like attention itself had become meaningless to him. Naomi lowered her gaze immediately and moved carefully toward the VIP section with the wine tray balanced against her hands. One of the bodyguards stopped her automatically. "She's with the service staff," another guard muttered after checking the tray. The first man stepped aside. Naomi entered quietly. "Your wine, sir." Min-jae turned toward her. And once again, everything around him seemed to disappear strangely, not fully, just enough. Her voice sounded softer up close, her eyes looked warmer, and somehow her presence felt calmer than the people surrounding him all night. Naomi carefully placed the bottles beside the table without looking directly at him again. Smart choice. Most people instinctively lowered themselves around powerful men, but as she turned slightly to leave, Min-jae spoke. "You smiled earlier." The sentence caught her completely off guard. Naomi paused, slowly looked back. "What?" His calm, narrow eyes remained fixed on her. Downstairs, the women nearby instantly became quieter, because Kang Min-jae almost never initiated conversations first, especially not with staff. Naomi swallowed lightly. "I didn't realize anyone noticed." "I did." Simple, direct, and somehow more intense because of it. Naomi tried to recover politely. "I'm sorry if it was inappropriate." A small pause followed. Then, why would smiling be inappropriate? She blinked slightly. Because honestly, she didn't know how to answer that. Min-jae watched her carefully now, not flirtatiously, observationally, like someone studying something unfamiliar. "You don't seem nervous around wealthy people," he said calmly. Naomi almost laughed softly at that. "That's because I work for them." A few nearby women exchanged subtle looks immediately. Too confident, too natural, too comfortable. Min-jae noticed that too. And strangely, it interested him even more. Most women changed around him. Their voices softened artificially. Their behavior adjusted. Their personalities became performances. Naomi still sounded like herself. That difference mattered. "What's your name?" he asked. One of the women nearby visibly stiffened, because now this was becoming real attention. Naomi hesitated briefly. "Naomi, Naomi." The way he repeated it sounded thoughtful rather than flirtatious. That somehow felt more dangerous. "You work here full-time?" "Yes." "Do you enjoy it?" That question surprised her more than anything else. Because nobody wealthy ever asked service workers if they enjoyed their lives. They only asked whether the service was acceptable. Naomi thought about lying politely. Instead, not really. A few people nearby looked horrified by the honesty, but Min-jae's expression barely changed. "What would you rather do?" The conversation no longer sounded normal, it sounded personal, and everyone around them could feel it. Naomi looked down briefly before answering. "I like painting." That caught him slightly off guard. "Painting?" She nodded softly. "But it doesn't really pay bills." Min-jae studied her quietly for a second. Then, "You should still do it." The answer came naturally, without performance. And strangely, Naomi believed he meant it. Before she could respond, one of the wealthy women nearby stepped forward smoothly. "Min-jae, they're waiting for you inside." Perfect timing. Intentional interruption. Min-jae barely glanced toward her. "I'll come later." The woman froze slightly, because people usually didn't interrupt Kang Min-jae twice. Still, she forced another smile. "We were discussing the investment proposal. I heard you the first time." Silence. Cold. Controlled. The woman stepped back immediately. Naomi suddenly understood something important. He wasn't rude because he enjoyed power. He was rude because pretending interest exhausted him. That realization changed him slightly in her mind. Min-jae looked back toward Naomi. "You should smile more often." The sentence landed softly, but something about it felt dangerously intimate. Naomi's heartbeat stumbled again. Around them, several women looked visibly irritated now. One in particular couldn't hide it anymore. "You're seriously interested in a waitress?" The atmosphere shifted instantly. Naomi lowered her eyes automatically. There it was. The reminder, the invisible line between worlds. But Min-jae's expression changed first. Not dramatically, just colder. The kind of cold, powerful men carried naturally. "She works harder than most people in this room," he said calmly. Silence spread immediately. Nobody answered. Because even his calm voice carried authority strong enough to end conversations instantly. The woman forced an awkward laugh. I didn't mean. I know exactly what you meant. That ended it. Completely. Naomi looked at him differently now. Not because he defended her. Because he did it without trying to embarrass her further. Most powerful men protected people loudly. To showcase power, Min Jae protected quietly. Like it was instinct. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than the rumors about him. The ballroom music continued softly in the background, while Seoul glittered beyond the towering windows around them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then suddenly, one of Min Jae's bodyguards moved closer quickly, too quickly. Sir, Min Jae looked toward him immediately. The bodyguard lowered his voice. But Naomi still caught the tension. There's been a problem downstairs. Min Jae's expression darkened slightly. What kind of problem? The bodyguard hesitated. Then, someone's asking for the waitress. The atmosphere changed immediately, not loudly, not dramatically, but people around Kang Min-jae noticed it instantly, because men like him rarely reacted emotionally. Yet the moment his bodyguard mentioned Naomi, something in his expression became colder, sharper, dangerous. Who's asking for her? Min-jae asked calmly. The bodyguard lowered his voice further. We're not sure yet. That answer alone was already a problem. Because uncertainty inside Min Jae's world usually meant one thing. Someone crossed a line they shouldn't have. Naomi stood frozen beside the VIP table, confused by the sudden tension surrounding her. Me? The bodyguard glanced toward her briefly, then back toward Min Jae. They specifically requested the African waitress from upstairs. One of the women nearby laughed awkwardly. Maybe somebody wants extra service. Nobody else laughed, because Min Jae didn't. And that silence became uncomfortable immediately. Naomi felt her chest tighten slightly. She had only worked there for 2 weeks. Nobody important even knew her name. So why would anyone specifically ask for her? Min Jae noticed the uncertainty in her expression instantly. Stay here. The words came calm, controlled, but they weren't a suggestion. Naomi blinked lightly. What's happening? We're about to find out. Then Min Jae started walking. And suddenly, the entire ballroom moved around him. Bodyguards shifted instantly. Guests stepped aside automatically. Women stopped talking mid-sentence. Power always changed the atmosphere before it changed the room. Naomi followed carefully behind him without realizing she was doing it. Partly because staying alone suddenly felt worse. The private elevator descended toward the lower luxury restaurant floor, in complete silence. Min Jae stood beside her calmly, one hand resting inside his pocket, while the city lights reflected softly across the polished black fabric of his suit. Naomi tried not to notice how intimidating he felt up close. Not aggressive, controlled, which somehow felt more dangerous. You don't seem surprised by situations like this, she said quietly. Min Jae kept his eyes ahead. I learned a long time ago that trouble usually arrives before introductions. That answer stayed with her. The elevator doors opened slowly, and immediately, the restaurant atmosphere felt wrong, too quiet. Chefs stopped moving. Waiters avoided eye contact. Even the kitchen manager looked pale. Near the far side of the restaurant entrance stood 3 men Naomi had never seen before. Expensive black suits, cold expressions, and the kind of calm posture dangerous men usually carried. One of them smiled slightly the moment he saw Min Jae approaching. There he is. The voice sounded smooth, polite, which somehow made it worse. Min Jae's expression didn't change. You're in my building. The man adjusted his cuffs slowly. For now. Silence. Naomi immediately realized something important. This wasn't random. These men came here intentionally, for her. And somehow, that terrified her more than if they came for Min Jae. The tallest man finally looked directly toward Naomi. There she is. Her stomach tightened instantly. Min Jae stepped slightly forward without even thinking about it. Subtle movement. Protective movement. The men noticed immediately. Interesting. We only came to ask her a few questions, the stranger said calmly. Min Jae's voice remained emotionless. You should ask permission first. We didn't think permission would be necessary. That was your first mistake. The air inside the restaurant tightened completely now. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed too loudly. Because everyone understood something dangerous was unfolding quietly in front of them. Naomi looked between the men nervously. I don't even know you. That's normal, the stranger replied smoothly. But someone knows you. Her heartbeat stumbled. What does that mean? The man smiled again. Your father owed money. The words hit instantly. Naomi's expression changed before she could hide it. Min-jae noticed immediately, and so did the stranger. There it is, he murmured softly. Recognition. Naomi felt cold suddenly. Because she understood now, this wasn't random. Her father's debts. The reason she moved to Seoul. The reason she worked non-stop trying to survive quietly. She thought that part of her life disappeared. Apparently, it hadn't. My father is gone, she said carefully. Debt survives longer than people. Min-jae's eyes darkened slightly. How much? The men glanced toward him briefly, then smiled. Interesting. Min-jae didn't repeat himself. How much? The stranger named the amount calmly. Several restaurant workers nearby inhaled sharply. The number was impossible. Naomi felt her knees weaken slightly, because nobody working ordinary jobs could ever repay something like that. The man continued smoothly. But fortunately, there may be another arrangement. Min-jae's expression hardened instantly, because now the conversation finally revealed its true direction. What arrangement? The stranger looked directly toward Naomi again. She's beautiful. Silence. Dangerous silence. And certain clients appreciate rare things. Every bodyguard near Min-jae shifted slightly at once. Not aggressively. Preparedly, Naomi felt sick immediately. Min-jae's calm voice became colder than before. You came into my building to traffic women. The stranger smiled faintly. We came to settle debt. Min-jae stepped forward slowly. And somehow, that single movement changed the entire room, because now he no longer looked calm. He looked controlled, which was worse. You have 10 seconds, Min-jae said quietly. The stranger laughed softly. You think this is personal because you suddenly like her smile? That sentence changed everything, because now Naomi understood something terrifying. These men had been watching upstairs too. Watching him watch her, Min-jae's eyes became unreadable. The stranger kept speaking. Powerful men always get distracted eventually. Then he smiled slightly. She'll become expensive. That was the moment the atmosphere broke completely. Min-jae moved first, fast enough that Naomi barely processed it. 1 second he stood beside her calmly. The next, the stranger crashed violently against the nearby restaurant table as glasses shattered across the floor. The entire restaurant froze. Min-jae grabbed the man by his collar calmly before leaning slightly closer. And somehow his quiet voice sounded more terrifying than shouting ever could. You walked into my building. A pause. You threatened someone under my protection. Another pause. And now, his grip tightened slightly. You're speaking too much. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Because this version of Kang Min-jae felt completely different from the man upstairs, ignoring women politely. This man looked dangerous. The kind rumors warned people about. The stranger's men immediately reached inside their jackets. But Min-jae's bodyguards already had weapons pointed before they could finish moving. Everything happened silently, efficiently, controlled. That was the frightening part. This wasn't chaos to them. This was routine. Naomi stood frozen beside the shattered table, while her heart pounded violently inside her chest. Because suddenly, she realized she had stepped into something far larger than herself. Min-jae slowly released the man before straightening his suit sleeves calmly. Then, take them out. Simple words, but they carried terrifying authority. The bodyguards moved instantly. Within seconds, the men disappeared from the restaurant completely. No screaming, no dramatic fight, just silence, heavy silence. The restaurant manager looked terrified. The chefs avoided eye contact completely, and Naomi could barely breathe normally anymore. Min-jae finally turned toward her again. Immediately, his expression softened slightly, Not warm, just softer than before. Are you hurt? The question shocked her more than the violence. Naomi shook her head slowly. Her voice failed briefly. You don't have to say anything. But those men won't bother you again. The certainty in his voice felt absolute, which somehow scared her even more. Naomi looked at him carefully now, really looked at him. At the tattoos disappearing beneath his collar, at the calm, dangerous eyes, at the power surrounding him naturally. And suddenly, the rumors about Kang Min-jae no longer felt exaggerated. They felt incomplete. Because dangerous men weren't frightening when angry. They were frightening when calm. You protected me, she whispered softly. Min-jae looked at her for a long second. Then, no, a pause. I decided nobody touches what's mine. Her breath caught instantly. So did everyone else's. Because those words meant something. Something dangerous. Something possessive. Something real. The older waitress nearby nearly dropped an entire tray hearing it. Naomi stared at him speechlessly. Min-jae finally stepped slightly closer. Close enough for his voice to lower. You should smile again. The sentence sounded quieter this time. More personal. And somehow, that made her smile appear naturally without thinking. Small, soft, beautiful. And for the first time that entire night, Kang Min-jae smiled back. Very slightly. But enough. Enough to shock the entire restaurant. Because nobody there had ever seen the Korean Mafia boss smile at anyone before. Especially not like that. Around them, Seoul glittered beyond the towering restaurant windows, while soft rain began falling against the city lights outside. Beautiful, quiet, dangerous, and somehow everything had changed from a single smile.